it becomes a larger part in bringing the UAE economy to the next steps, potentially a post-hydrocarbon future.
Insurrection.
And the region's first
Or
bank merger of 2021 kicks off, and it's
Insane
in
Antifa,
your
dude.
territory in Qatar. So the details, Simone.
It's got in the Bloomberg.
Yeah, it is.
Bloomberg.
Masraf Al Rayan and Al Khalij Commercial
Bloomberg,
Bank, they will combine in a $2.2 billion deal that will make the new entity the second largest lender in Qatar.
Fear and torture run deep in the U.S.'s budding ally in Africa. What?
Really
Fear and torture?
Consolidation
What the hell does that mean?
This year. One is a response to coronavirus, the fact that oil prices
Ends
and
restrictions
energy
on
prices
diplomats
are low. Maybe
over
that had an
Taiwan.
impact on this because these banks
Pompeo
started talking to each
says-
other back in June. But also Fitch coming out and saying we could see more inflows.
Nancy
into Qatari
Pelosi
banks, particularly
trying to
from
pull a
Saudi
coup.
Arabia, now that relations seem to be resolved between
Yo, what's going on,
these
CJ?
Gulf players. But hey, first merger of the year. Lots
Good
to be
game,
watching
good
for as
game.
we head into 2021.
We gotta go.
Simone, thank you for that. That's Simone Foxman at the Qatar Financial Center in Doha.
Yo.
Well, let's get to a big name in the crypto space, and that is, of course, the Galaxy Investment Partners CEO, Mike Novogratz, because he told Bloomberg what kind of gains he expects ahead.
I think both gold and Bitcoin are going a lot higher. Gold could easily go up 30% this year. You know, when markets start breaking to new highs and there's
Gold versus
these
Bitcoin.
manias, it's very hard to pick a top, right? Like I originally thought Bitcoin will go to 50 or 60,000 this year because that's 10% of gold. But all of a sudden things are happening so fast, it could easily be 20% gold. And I think gold is going higher. And so we are certainly in an acceleration of the
Yeah,
worry about
I streamed
debasing
Minecraft for a
of
little
fiat
bit.
currency. When I say debasing of fiat currencies, it's central banks printing money. Think about what I said, 75% of all the dollars in circulation were printed in the last 12 years. I'm sorry, 10 years. That's an incredible statistic. It broadly means that, you have 4 times as many dollars as we did 10 years ago.
I got a couple videos of it.
That's Mike Novogratz there.
I was actually just playing it the other day.
Is primarily that I haven't been able to make the kind of
I built like
returns
this big ass
in the last few
fucking
weeks like you've been able to do.
pyramid,
And so
and then
if I
there's like a
missed out,
diamond
then
on top of the
I
pyramid.
feel quite ambivalent about it.
I think deep down secretly you're just hoping
Like
that
a
maybe I've
big
actually
ass
got some
diamond
Bitcoins
made out
and
of the
maybe
pyramid.
I might
Same
retire
structure,
and
like
go
it
live
goes
life
up and then it
on
goes.
Palm kind of thing. But on a slightly
I don't know, looks
on a
pretty
slightly
sick.
more serious note,
I don't know what to do.
it's about liquidity as well. I mean, the whole debate. I mean, we listening into what Mike actually had to say there. He says we're in a mania moment. It's going to be very hard to call a top. It's interesting that when you hear somebody like Mike Novogratz now beginning to talk
I got a
about
pretty
where is the
sick
top
world,
of this
though.
market. He thought it was $40,000.
I made like a
He's
big
now
ass
pitching out numbers like 50,
stable and like
$60,000. Now, at that
a log
level,
cabin.
You're looking at the equivalent of around
Sky
10%
bridge.
of the gold market. But in his mind, it's all about the printing of the
I got a
dollars.
horse.
Yeah, and there's always the risk of these very large players holding.
I don't really know how
very
to play
large
it, so I just
positions,
like set up this
and
whole little
thereby
area.
have
And then someone was
quite
watching, and
a
like, why the hell
supreme
did you
amount
build
of
your house in
control
a
over the
swamp?
direction of price. But in any case, it's a fascinating conversation. I want to get to some breaking lines.
Dude, the
from
online
Hong
shit's kinda
Kong.
weird.
We had the joint statement overnight on the Hong Kong security law and on some of the arrests.
Like, if you could just
from
go into
the
a
countries,
world
including
where it's
the
like
United
2
States,
people in that
and
world
Europe as
only,
well.
and then it's like
Now we
normal
have a
rules and
response
shit.
from the Hong Kong government. They've
That'd be
commented
pretty
in
cool, but
email, in a statement,
that shit's
they have now
confusing
said
online.
that,
Like, you would
the
think it'd be
comments
easy
the
for
US,
little kids and stuff, but
others slander Hong Kong's law, and they are rejecting the statement of concerns over the arrest.
That
So
shit's
that from
confusing.
Hong Kong. And then on the corporate side, we also have some earnings from Extra, don't we?
We do indeed. So they've actually come out on the tape now. Let's just
Alright.
give you those.
Bloomberg. Let's go here to First TV.
Is beginning to change with Generation Z Americans. We're embracing conservative ideas. We're embracing limited
Yeah,
government.
dude, that's
and freedom of
Charlie
speech.
Kirk's
And
wife.
It's incredibly exciting to be a part of.
It's gonna be Isabel Kirk. Expose the Great Reset.
Joining me now is Hal Lambert. He's the former Ted Cruz National Finance Chair, and he's the founder and CEO of Point Bridge Capital. He's also one of the most intelligent human beings I've ever met in my life. And he says he's been looking at data
Pretty
about the election.
generous
and I wanted to
introduction
start there
there.
with Hal. Hal, what have you seen?
Well, I've seen a few things. I mean, I've had some data scientists looking at this. As an example, if you look at Georgia, you had easy to see the inactive voter rolls. You had 15,000 inactive voters, meaning the state of Georgia could not locate them. They weren't at their addresses. They couldn't find them. They voted. It's determined at least
They voted and then dipped out.
400 of those don't live in Georgia anymore. The others, we don't know who they are. We can't find them. They don't know who they are, but they voted. So, you know, that's enough right there to overturn Georgia. But a bigger finding has been with these Dominion machines. And I was a little bit skeptical of the whole Dominion thing, but I had a friend of mine take a look at the data, and this is
Still
what he
some
does for a
shit
living.
coming
He's
out.
a fraud. He looks at fraud for insurance companies.
It's not over yet,
And he
baby.
ran data on Dominion machines, looking at it this way. In 2008, Dominion was only used in one state, basically, the state of New York. By 2020, it was used in over 3,000 counties in the United States. So what he did was he excluded New York, and he looked at the voting patterns
see
from
real quick.
2008
There's
and
this
compared
cool
them to 2020.
YouTube channel that I
And then you
found.
can run a regression model and statistically look at, did a Dominion machine in the county have an effect on the outcome of the vote? And you can look at it with statistical certainty on whether or not it did. And the answer is it did, to about the tune of 1.5% on average, meaning there was a 1.5% greater vote for Biden and a 1.5% decline in vote for Trump on average in places where the Dominion machine was used, keeping everything else constant. So if you look out and say, okay, how does this work? Think about a county, any county you may know, that's very similar to another county from demographics and everything else, and one used Dominion and the other did not use Dominion. And you can look at that over thousands of counties, and you can look at statistical regression and hold other factors constant, and you can see that the data with those counties that use Dominion, it could have been a Republican county on both cases, but let's say that one county came in at 58% for Trump and the other was 42% for Biden, or 58-42 for Biden in that county. The other county might have been 56 for Trump and 44 for Biden, when it really should have still statistically been the other way, 58-42. So that's what I'm looking at, and that data's out there. The campaign has it. It's out publicly now, and it's been challenged and not been able to be refuted. So that's something that's going to have to be looked at. It's not going to be in time probably for January, but we can look at that over the next 6 months and really need to audit these Dominion machines. That's the way you're going to figure it out.
So what do we think happened? Do we think the machine was, because people hear all these things and they hear these numbers and their eyes glaze over, but do we think, you know, Flossie walked up there and hammered the button for Donald Trump, and as soon as it got sent back, the computer switched it to Joe Biden? Is that what we think?
It looks like what's happening is that the computer is somehow skewing those votes just slightly enough for Biden over Trump. And
That's a 51-49. So every time you vote for Biden, you get 51. And every time you vote for Trump, you get a 49. So it'd be literally 1 point extra every vote for Biden, or 2 points extra, which I think it was right around there. And then what happens is, oh shit, we still don't have enough, even though we skewed the numbers. Shut it down, shut it down. Shut it down, then you go middle of the night, fucking start running some shit through. What the fuck? Give it up for CJ. After that, when you looked away, there was a naked dude for a sec. Oh my god. No.
Well, I'm glad we get to take our cues on safety from Bill de Blasio.
I gotta blur it out.
It's sad. He's going to close the entire city down, but say the subways are fine. It's really unbelievable what they're doing in these states, and it's very clear they're counting on major federal bailout money for these states with the Biden administration. That's what they're hanging their hat on, is that, hey, it doesn't matter. We're going to get billions of dollars to come in here and bail out our tax base that we no longer have and bail out our pension funds.
I don't understand why they think that's good enough, though. Here's what I mean. I understand how New York City, New York State would feel like they can torpedo their economy and then just go to Nancy Pelosi and get a big fat check. But even if they do, I mean, you know a lot more about economics than I do. You can't possibly distribute that money in the same way the private sector could. You've still lost so much of your base because those businesses are going out of business.
I know, but really what you're looking at is a lot of these politicians, they've never worked in the real world. They're just academics. I mean, look at Joe Biden. He's never worked in the real world. Even when he left the vice presidency, all he did was give speeches and write a book. He didn't go create any jobs, and now he's out saying he's going to create millions of jobs for the economy. Well, he's never done it. I mean, what's he saying? The government's going to do that? His policies are going to do that? It's the same kind of, ego that you have with the Gavin Newsoms of the world, the Cuomos of the world. Their view is that the government can make anything happen that they want to make happen, and if they will it, then they'll just will more restaurants back into New York City, and it'll happen. I don't see it happening. They don't really understand it, and we're going to find out over the next couple of years how bad it gets in these places.
Super cool. There's your cars honking everywhere. What is this? Critter vision? Oh my god. Sick. North Pole. Times Square. What? Got some bears chilling. I'm noticing the camera, it looks like. So cool. What is that in the background? Is there another bear? Oh, what? The fuck
Big
Sky
source
News
of
say no?
infection. Now, people have to get food from somewhere. There's a
They're always
limited
talking
number
about
of
the
online
COVID.
slots. So, although lack of compliance is an issue, and clearly people do need to observe the rules and stay at home and take this seriously, I don't think it is the key issue. And the key issue is that the government doesn't actually have a strategy for getting us out of this beyond vaccination. And I'm afraid everything I've read about this seems to me to indicate that we are not going to get out of this pandemic for quite a long time. I'd be very surprised if we were through this by the end of the year, actually.
Okay. Obviously, the government is hoping to hit its vaccination targets sooner than that, and hopes that will mean a lifting of some restrictions. But let's just move on, shall we, Matthew, to the front of the Observer. They also lead with the impact on the NHS of COVID, but they talk particularly about the workforce.
Yeah, that's right. And it's a similar story to the one on the front of the Sunday Times. Medical services on the front line are extremely stretched. Doctors in intensive care and beyond are extremely anxious about what the future is going to bring. I mean, it's already at breaking point, and it's going to get worse in the coming weeks. I mean, it is interesting that one of the effects of having such a rampant virus and so many people, particularly in London, who have been infected, is that the virus will have fewer people to infect. That's to say, we will be getting closer through infection, natural infection, to herd immunity. So I do think that in conjunction with the vaccine, it will give us an opportunity to come out the other side midway through this year, but obviously with a very high death rate. And just taking a step back, I think Christina said the government doesn't have a strategy. I think the big error has been to think of a trade-off between lives and livelihoods. If only we could open up the economy some more, eat out to help out, we'll be able to get the economy moving, and therefore that will be better even if we sacrifice a few lives. Of course, it doesn't work like that. If you contain the virus in the way that some nations have done, particularly in East Asia, it means you can open up the economy without a risk, because you have the opportunity to crack down on those small pockets when they do arise. Taiwan has only had 7 deaths in total. Its economy is growing by more than 2.5%. We have 80,000 deaths and our economy is tanked. So I think that's been the basic fundamental error in the government strategy here. And by the way, it's a very similar death rate per 1,000 of population as Italy, the United States, Spain and France. So it's the whole of the Western world that has performed remarkably badly.
And we've talked a little bit about the message coming from the Chief Medical Officer in the Sunday Times, Christina, about the impact that non-compliance could have on the vulnerable. The Sunday Telegraph takes another angle, and that is about enforcement of the rules. And Priti Patel saying tonight that she kind of backed the police taking tough steps. Tell us what the Sunday Telegraph is saying here.
Yes, well, the Telegraph's saying that the police are going to toughen up, basically, because there's been a very kind of consensual approach to this, that it's guidance, and the police are kind of telling people that they advising them to follow the guidance, and now they are going to crack down much more, apparently, so that after one warning, if people don't go home, they will get fined. It's a kind of tougher approach. I hope that will work. Certainly in other countries like Spain and Italy and France, they've had much, much tougher lockdowns. And Portugal, I've had a friend who lives in Portugal, and she says people really follow the rules very carefully there. We do a worse job here. But on the other hand, you do hear stupid stories like two girls who were going for a walk by a lake who were carrying a takeaway cup of tea who were fined by the police. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Of course you can walk with a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. So it does work both ways. I think it's kind of lack of common sense arrests like that that make people, that again, destroy the trust between police and members of the public. This is all slightly after the horse has bolted, but we just have to do whatever we can now to bring this virus more under control, because people are dying at a really terrible rate, and every single one of those deaths is a tragedy. It's a broken-hearted family, all the friends, all the loved ones. We are living through a tragedy, and we can get sort of almost desensitized to it, but we shouldn't, because I remember sitting in the Sky studio when the first death from COVID was announced and being horrified. And now it's perfectly normal to sit here and talk about 1,300 a day. It's absolutely shocking.
Yes, and even being reminded of you sitting in the studio, that feels like a long time ago. And obviously it's all because of COVID that we have the change there. Matthew, what's your view on how the police should handle this, and why people might not be complying? I mean, the politicians do give credit to the vast majority of people and say that a lot of people have obeyed the rules patiently for a long time, but there are some that aren't. What do you think the reason for that is? Do you think it's fatigue with it all? Do you think there are people thinking, well, we're nearly through this, we've got the vaccine now? What do you think might be behind it?
Well, there's pretty good data on that. I mean, a couple of things. First of all, I'm extremely sympathetic to the police, because the rules have changed so many times, understandably, by the way. You have to adapt to the circumstances in which you find yourself. I don't envy politicians having to deal with this very complex, multi-dimensional problem. But the police seeking to enforce it on the ground with the population who aren't entirely sure all the time what the rules are, they don't work in the media, they're not following it as rigorously as we are. And then the police have to do it with sensitivity, with judgment, with common sense. On the one hand, not wanting, as Christina said, to crack down on people who may have made a small mistake because they're carrying cups of coffee, but on the other hand, making sure that they do crack down on those who are pushing the boundaries too far. I think it's an extremely difficult thing for the police. In terms of the countries that have done very well on this, it's been a combination of carrot and stick. Remember, test, trace and isolate, which we still haven't managed to get the hang of. One of the crucial things, the thing we often miss, is isolation of those who are infected or suspected infected. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. And many nations have really supported those who go into isolation with accommodation, visiting them every day, giving them an incentive also by subsidizing them when they go into isolation, coupled with very significant fines, much more than £200 if they break the isolation. We haven't got anywhere near a kind of a robust test, trace and isolate, not even close.
Okay, and let's move on to the other story that is on a few of the front pages, Christina, and that is the fact that we learnt today that the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh had their jab today at Windsor Castle. There it is on the front of the Sunday Express, but that story also makes the front of the Sunday Mirror as well. And what kind of how important do you think this is as a front page story for people? Do you think it does send out a message? Are they seen as role models here?
I think it absolutely does send out a message. I think the Queen is a tremendous role model for all of us. Her sense of duty and her compassion and her sense of public service runs so deep. I think there are very few people, whether or not you're a monarchist or even if you're a Republican, I think most people admire and respect the Queen. She is an extraordinary person, and she has chosen to reveal this information in order to encourage people to get vaccinated. And we need a very high proportion of the population to take up the offer of vaccination, because if not, we are simply not going to get rid of the pandemic. We're going to have too high levels of infection circulating. So it's very good news, I think, and I really hope that people will be encouraged by the Queen rather than by the crazy conspiracy theories about chips and Bill Gates and 5G masks and QAnon and whatever else it is they're reading about on whatever social media platforms they're looking at.
Did you want to have a quick word on that, Matthew? We ought to go to a break, but have you got a quick thought?
Well, it's interesting. Well, in psychology, it's been the power of celebrity endorsement. People go out and buy Gillette razors because Roger Federer endorses them. The Queen taking the vaccine is like the ultimate celebrity endorsement. I shouldn't really call her a celebrity, but you know what I mean.
I do know what you mean. She's certainly quite famous, isn't she? Let's take a break right now. Do stay with us. Coming up, get him out, they say, but is it worth impeaching the president just days before he leaves the White House? We're going to be talking about that in just a minute. Welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me tonight, Christina Patterson and Matthew Syed. And we're turning to the issue of Donald Trump next. Matthew, front page of The Observer, "Get him out" is the quotation on the front page there. Pressure growing on Trump. And these are moves by Democrats to have him impeached.
Yeah, there's 11 days to go before the transition of power. Trump has, I mean, what's been described as a hostage video, has said that he will honour the peaceful transfer of power, and he did actually condemn the violence that he had himself incited. I thought this was a naked attempt to evade criminal responsibility for incitement to insurrection. The question on impeachment is, I think, partly timing, and also partly whether it's possible to get 2/3 of the Senate to vote in favour. But I think the mistake that is potentially going to be made is that with Trump leaving the White House, everything's going to be politically okay for the United States. I think the divisions in American society are extremely deep, and this isn't just about nutters on the right or the very extreme wokists on the left. It has really infiltrated the vitals of the system, and representative samples of Americans do seem to be prepared to trash democratic norms so long as it favours their own side. That is an extremely dangerous position for the most powerful nation on earth to be in.
And what do you think about this, Christina? Because is it right to push for impeachment, given that he has 11 days left in office? Or is there a sense that Joe Biden's task will be to pull the nation together, and this may not be the way of doing it? What's your take on it?
Well, Joe Biden's task is to try to pull the nation together. It's one of many, many tasks. Actually, his chief task at the moment is to fight COVID, since Donald Trump has done such a disastrous job on that front. Since this is Nancy Pelosi, the leader of the House Leader of the Democrats, who's bringing this, I don't think it will be seen as a Biden thing. And actually, whether or not it's expedient, for me, isn't the point. The point is that Donald Trump, well, clearly he's mentally ill. There is something very profoundly wrong with him. That has been evident for a very long time. But he has also acted illegally. This is an act of sedition. It was an act of treason. He very clearly incited people to violence. And there has to be, you can't have a situation where anyone in any normal citizen gets away with that, let alone an American president. You have to send the message, whether it's impeachment or whether it's prosecution. He can't be allowed just to resign and then slink off to his bunker or wherever he wants to go. So I do think that there are no good options, basically, but he has to be prosecuted, I think, and impeached.
Okay, and of course we don't know what his reaction is to this, or we haven't for the last 24 hours, because he's been taken off Twitter, Matthew, which is on the front of the Sunday Telegraph. They say he's gone ballistic over this. He's upset and says that it's damaging free speech.
Well, I think incitement to violence should be policed in a free society. And I think most people would agree with that. What I'm uncomfortable about, if this was judges determining that somebody has incited violence, therefore loses the opportunity to speak in the public square for a certain amount of time, that's fine. The public square today is digital platforms. I'm extremely uncomfortable about the adjudication on this very important matter being made by Mark Zuckerberg and Nick Clegg. And the other thing is whilst I'm a very strong advocate for free speech for human beings, I don't believe in free speech for bots. And a very large proportion of tweets on Twitter are bots, often being mobilized by Vladimir Putin's Twitter armies and those of President Xi Jinping. There shouldn't be free speech for algorithms and bots that are seeking to divide Western societies. And even for humans, I don't think it should be policed by chief executives on the west coast of America.
Okay, there's such a debate to be had there, but Christina, I'm going to rush us on because there is a story on the front of the Sunday Times which has taken your interest about an appetite in America for classic British television.
Yes, this is our only lovely story of the night and possibly of the year, but let's hope things get better. American housewives are signing up for BritBox, this subscription TV service, like it's kind of British Netflix, and they're watching things like Fawlty Towers and French and Saunders. I grew up on Fawlty Towers, absolutely loved it. I remember watching it in a wooden cabin in the wilds of a Swedish forest once.
What a great image.
Archetypally English and absolutely wonderful. So I'm all in favour of American Housewives enjoying it.
And we've all got plenty of time to catch up on those series now, haven't we? We are out of time, but Matthew and Christina, always good to see you both. Thanks very much indeed.
Shit. Oof. Big old dip. Like that lemon border, constitutional. What's that? 11 border? What's that mean? What's going on, King Kong? King Kong ain't got shit on me. Rolling up better than King Kong's fingers. Well, no. What do you mean, like that 11 border? What does that mean? Ho Chi Minh? Ho Chi Minh? Vladivostok. Vladivostok. Alright, let's go back to the start. No, they're probably gonna do fuck. Oh shit, she looks scary.
I'm David Weston. Bloomberg Television is reinventing one of the most iconic brands.
Pelosi tells lawmakers prepare for action next week on Trump. Jeez.
Program for the clever investor. This is Bloomberg Wall Street.
Rescue team resumed search for missing plane in Indonesia.
We did see some pressure on the yuan. We did see some pressure on the futures. That is now being reversed.
Google, Microsoft, among corporate donors to Biden's inauguration. Google and Microsoft. Oh, that's no surprise.
About the funds and the flows.
New Zealand central bank probing data breach for sensitive info. Oh.
As Germany extends virus restrictions and the UK enters another lockdown, when will Europe's economic deep freeze
Oh
finally
my
lift?
God, pencil
We'll
break
discuss
with Trump
what it
and
means
attend
for
Biden-Harris
The
inauguration.
trillion-euro market as Europe's ETFs cross a milestone. We'll also ask what innovations will keep it growing in 2021. And a strong start to the year for gold, but could an unwinding of large ETF holdings prove a major headwind for bullion? With the White House and Congress soon to be both under Democratic control, blue wave trades
California
took off
deaths
this
hit
week. Now,
record.
in Europe, sector ETFs linked to Biden policies saw
Isn't every day a
inflows,
new
while
record?
inflation plays also advance. Well, joining us to discuss all of this is Bloomberg's Danny Berger. Hi, Danny.
Hi, Francine. Well, I have
Most cases
inflation
ever
trades up here,
reported
but I
every
also
day.
want to talk about thematic
There's more
funds
cases
as
every
well.
day.
So I want to show you the full screen for that as well, because after the Georgia election, we saw a lot of thematic-based funds do extremely well. So that's things like clean energy, for example. We have Biden, for example, proposing a $2 trillion fund to help with clean energy initiatives, get the industry off of coal by 2035. So we saw that fund advance to its highest level since its foundation, since that ETF came to market. It's an iShares fund. We also saw other sort of thematic plays do very well. For example, cannabis ETFs. This one is from Han ETFs, gained 6.2%. Again, all of these are on January 6th. So this is the really initial reaction to the Georgia election and the U.S. Senate turning blue. Finally, we have the USA SRI fund. So this is a social responsibility investment fund. So again, it's playing into that sort of ESG thing. Francine, you and I both know thematics are really popular among European investors. So they really took this chance, this election results, to look at these thematic ETFs and go ahead and buy some more that really play well into that Biden blue wave sort of trade.
Danny, what about reflationary plays? So are European ETF investors betting on those as well?
They certainly are. And this is a trade we saw start to be put on when Biden was first elected after those initial election results as well. So that was the other one we were looking at. That was when bank ETFs really took off. They were actually the best performing
US
ETF
ends
in Europe on
restrictions on
January 6th,
diplomats
so with
over
an
Taiwan.
8.2% gain.
What
We
does that
saw
mean?
things like
I'll have to look
energy
that up.
do very well. So again, that's that reflation, that opening up sort of trade we had seen before,
can
but
have
now
Taiwan
it's due to more
diplomats then,
stimulus
again?
expected out of the U.S., more growth. So we see energy do well, and even U.S.
There's gonna be shit
small
passed every day,
cap
watch.
value does well. Now this is a fund that had really only come to market over the past few months, but that gained more than 5% in the day of the election. So it really shows that it's not just investors in Europe, it's also Europe-listed ETFs that really has some excitement around them regarding this inflation trade.
Why, Danny, would investors actually use ETFs to trade the blue wave instead of single stocks?
Well, we see this a lot in the ETF world when there's a big overriding macro story that's perhaps different than what investors had thought, that they need to change suddenly. It's much more easy to go in and buy an ETF owning a basket of, be it themes or these sort of reflationary stocks, than go out and pick individual winners. It's a quicker way of putting on this trade. A lot of times we do see these sorts of ETFs act as placeholders, and for example, maybe later investors will go in and pick out the specific energy names that they want. But in the initial aftermath of a big
energy
event,
stocks
it
are
is
gonna
very
blow
common
up.
that we see this played out in
If
ETFs
it's true.
versus single stock names, Francine.
Danny, thanks so much. Our Danny Berger there with some of the moves that
Oil
we've
stocks
had
are
this
gonna
week.
tank.
Now, the Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey has risked reigniting the politically charged debate over Brexit by predicting that the trade deal struck with the European Union could end up costing the UK economy the equivalent of more than £80 billion. Well, his
Jesus.
warning comes just weeks after the long-sought trade agreement.
Sounds
between
like so
EU
much
and
when they
UK was
say
sealed.
pounds.
But what's the investment angle with all of
80
this? Will the
billion
economic
pounds.
actually pain mean losses for UK stocks, or are there opportunities from the deal? Well, joining us now to discuss all of this is Bloomberg News' Ksenia Galuchko. Ksenia, thank you for joining us from the ETF perspective. So has there been a shift in investor sentiment towards UK stocks since the Brexit deal?
Absolutely, Francine. UK stocks are now heading for their best start to the year on record, as investors are betting that the UK economy can finally start recovering from the pandemic and Brexit volatility.
How?
You've
It's
got
still
the
locked
likes
down.
of Citigroup and UBS Wealth Management saying that UK equities are cheap and attractive thanks to their high yields. And investors are obviously really relieved that the Brexit trade deal talks are finally behind them and there's more clarity ahead. Now, UK ETFs have been seeing powerful inflows since the end of last year. And in addition to the removal of the no-deal Brexit risk, we also have positive sentiment coming from the U.S., where Joe Biden's victory and the Democrats' win in Georgia are fueling bets on more fiscal stimulus and infrastructure spending. Reflation trades are booming all over the world.
They're trying to talk it out. Nobody wants to talk about fucking
Joe Biden
Bitcoin,
and communist China.
cryptocurrency.
We're talking a huge story with witnesses, not paid Republican operative witnesses. Remember Tony Bobulinski? We're talking lifetime
Bobulinski.
Democrat witnesses, former partners with Joe Biden, producing
came out,
emails, producing text
did
messages.
nothing,
We're looking at
but
it's
throw
here in
himself
black
under the
and white.
bus.
We had this story come out.
Poor
and
guy.
whether you think the story is relevant or not does not matter at all for my purposes today. What is relevant is this. The New York Post broke this story originally, and credit to them. The New York Post broke the story. Big Tech suspended their account immediately for breaking a news story about the preferred candidate of Big Tech. Not only did they suspend the New York Post, they blocked anyone else, you, me, anybody, from sharing said story. I still can't fully wrap my mind around that, what that means for the American public, but it is really bad, because whether you're on social media or not, just understand that at least 3 billion people or more are worldwide. It is huge. The leaders of society are on it. Corporations are on it. Presidents, senators, congressmen, dictators. Around the world, foreign policy is being conducted on Twitter. I know that's horrible. Maybe it's insane, but it is true. The power of it cannot be denied, and the people who hate you control it. That is not good. That's really not, setting the Biden-Trump stuff aside, what does that mean for the future? What does it mean? Doug Collins had this to say.
Well, as one who's regularly has been censored by Twitter, it doesn't surprise me. Look, we've seen this coming up to it. We've seen them trying to move the election. Everything that remotely resembles a question, a legitimate question about this election is being tagged with some kind of a statement at the bottom. Look, they don't like the president. They never liked the president. They did not want him reelected. We had proof of that from Google and Facebook and others all throughout that we've been trying to expose that most media never would touch. And so it doesn't surprise me that they're going to try and spin a narrative that everything was fine. It's just like the Secretary of State in Georgia. Everything was fine, we were told, until all of a sudden we started finding ballots, and then there becomes a problem. So we've got to continue this fight. Martha, you've been asking the right questions. We just got to continue to make sure that this is open and transparent so that Americans can have trust in their voting system.
Right? Did you even talk about post-election? Post-election, all these things out there, videos, witnesses, sworn affidavits. I saw fraud here, I saw fraud there. I don't know how much of it there was. You don't know how much of it there was. There sure does appear to be a lot of it. Anytime anybody, including the President of the United States, Donald Trump, references any of these things, it's met with a little asterisk at the bottom. Oh, this hasn't been verified. We're allowing them to seize all the roads in and out. How do you think that ends? This is the phone of yesteryear. This is the way people consume news and communicate with each other. If we allow the people who hate you and me to control it, we don't have much longer to go. I am grateful for people like Senator Ted Cruz.
I will say it's dismaying listening to the questions from our Democratic colleagues, because consistently the message from Senate Democrats is for Facebook and Twitter and Google to censor more, to abuse their power more, to silence voices that Senate Democrats disagree with more. That is very dangerous if we want to maintain a free and fair democracy, if we want to maintain free speech. There was a time when Democrats embraced and defended the principles of free speech. There was a time when Democrats embraced and defended the principles of a free press. And yet there's an absolute silence from Democrats speaking up for the press outlets censored by big tech. There's an absolute silence for Democrats speaking out for the citizens silenced by big tech. Instead, there is a demand, use even more power to silence dissent, and that's a totalitarian instinct that I think is very dangerous. At the same time...
Oh my god. Everybody's a broken record right now. Let's do some fucking Omegle. I'm gonna end this one off here and then set it up and do Omegle. Cause fucking...